The views and opinions expressed on the following program may not necessarily reflect the views of the staff, management, or board of Hope Media Group and KSBJ. It's what's happening around us, in our town, suburb, city, in our community. It's Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Well, hello and welcome to Community Beat, where we're keeping you tuned in to the topics that are impacting our local communities and helping them to thrive. I'm your host, Kim Kasi McKee, Community Relations Director for Hope Media Group. Today, we'll be talking about an educational program that helps you to better understand a biblical worldview. The program is called Colson Fellows. And joining us today is someone who can tell us everything we'd like to know about this opportunity. We have Kip Thomson, who's the Regional Cohort Director for Colson Fellows. Kip, welcome.
Thank you, Kim. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Also, a student and advocate of the program. I might even say a huge fan of the program. One of my colleagues here at Hope Media Group who very enthusiastically told me about the program. That's Sean Hill, who's our Vice President of Finance, who will also be sharing some of his firsthand experience with us. So welcome, Sean.
Well, thanks. Good morning, Kim. Glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. All right. Well, again, welcome to both of you. We're looking forward to just jumping in and learning more about this exciting opportunity. So, Kip, we'll just begin with you. Let us know what is Colson Fellows and when and how did it all get started?
Okay. Well, let me summarize in one sentence at the beginning. It's an intensive year-long training where you learn to use biblical wisdom to navigate the craziness of our current times and find your place in restoring God's world. That's my one sentence summary. I've been a follower of Chuck Colson for a long time.
Sure.
So when I was in my early 30s, I decided to figure out whether Christianity was real or not. And I spent 3 years reading books, all kinds of books about all kinds of different worldviews and different religions. And in that process, one of the books that I read was How Now Shall We Live, which was Chuck Colson's sort of overview book on this whole idea of creation, fall, redemption, and restoration. And I just loved that book. And at the end of that process, when I decided to give my life to Christ and become a Christian, I started following Chuck Colson. And I did that through Breakpoint, which is a daily devotional sort of summary of world events or summary of what's going on. And so I listened to that. I read that every day. And as I started reading that, one of the things that they talked about every year was this idea of this Colson Fellows program, this year-long training where you can learn about how to apply the biblical wisdom. And I said, I want to do that. I want to do that. And it took me a few years to get going and to sign up for it. And actually, Chuck died before I got to sign up. But I was in the 12th class of that program. And so that's how I got involved with the Colson Fellows program.
Wow. How long has the program been going on?
So this is the 19th year now.
Okay.
So this class that we're talking about, starting in July, will be the 19th group that's gone through the program.
Excellent. So why is it important for us to have that biblical worldview?
Well, if you believe that God created the world and God created everything in it, then his perspective on how we should live is critical to understand and ultimately leads to flourishing. And if we don't follow his perspective, then we see the chaos that's all around us. So,
that's right.
One of the things that we say a lot is that ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims. And we're seeing those bad ideas and their victims all around us today.
Wow. Say that one more time.
So ideas have consequences and bad ideas have victims.
Wow.
Right.
That's
and so
powerful.
as those who love Christ and want to see his world come to play and his kingdom be restored, we don't want to see victims. We want people to know the truth, because the truth will set them free.
Amen.
And the truth will give them life. And so a big part of our ministry is how do we help people see and understand that the Bible has answers to all the issues that we see around us.
I think that's so key, that the Bible has answers. Even as Christians and believers, a lot of times people look at the news and look and listen and feel hopeless and helpless and want to know, what can I do? It just feels like dropping just a pebble in the ocean. What can my little response mean? And what I love about your program it gives some very practical things. And we'll be talking about that, of how everyone can respond. There's something that we can all do. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about Colson Fellows, which is a program that helps you to understand the times that we're living in from a biblical perspective and help you gain some wisdom and foundation for that. And we're speaking with Kip Thomson, who is the regional director. And so, Kip, you're telling us a little bit more about what Colson Fellows is all about. What are some of those larger themes you talk about in the course? What are some of those specific areas?
So there's a number of themes that we hit on. One of them is this big picture narrative of the Bible, right? So this concept of creation, fall, redemption, restoration. Mm-hmm. And what often happens is the Bible gets, the gospel story gets truncated and it becomes personal. It's fall and it's redemption. And that's what we hear about, right? But if you don't understand how creation comes into play and how God created us in his image to be his image bearers, right? And to take care of his world, and you don't understand the concept of restoration, that God is coming again, then you have a real tendency to sort of privatize that idea. So it's all about me. It's my fall and my redemption. And we try to look at it from a broader perspective.
Okay.
It's the fall, it's the creation of the world that was good. It's the restoration of the world to come that will be good once more. And it's our role in between those two things. So understanding the creation narrative gives you a better perspective on not just this, how the gospel impacts you personally, but the role that you're to play in helping restore the fall personally and more corporately into the larger world around us.
I love that, because it is so easy to become very me-centered. But I'm thinking of the passage that says, no man lives to himself and no man dies to himself, and how it is important. We are our brother's keeper. And to be able to live in a way that we will be a good or bad example to someone. You know, we can shed light. We can be a part of the solution, or we can be a part of the problem.
Right.
And with the tools that people will gain through this course, it helps us to be a part of the solution.
Right.
And
also recognize we're part of the problem, because we're all sinners.
Right.
And ultimately the battle is within each of us.
That's good.
Right. And so we don't want to ignore that perspective.
Yes.
That we're not, that, you know, some of the worldviews that exist believe that people are basically good. Right. And of course, the Christian perspective is that people are good, but they're also bad, that they have a sin nature, a selfishness that needs to be overcome. And so Christian solutions take that into account, and other worldviews don't necessarily take that into account. Or you get this concept that there is universal truth. So the Christians believe there is universal truth and it's found in the Bible.
Right.
A lot of what we see today is this concept that I can define my own truth.
Oh,
right?
Yes, you do hear that. It's like, this is my truth. That's, you live your truth.
Right.
That's a recipe for madness.
It is, and chaos,
Amen.
right? Because truths are in conflict in that worldview.
Yes.
And so this idea that we can, sometimes we call it expressive individualism, where each person can have their own truth, right?
Right.
It's just it comes from a flawed worldview.
Absolutely. So what is the idea of public theology? Talk a little bit about that.
So public theology is the ability to take some of these concepts and share them broadly. So the creation, fall, redemption, restoration concept, or one of the things that we talk about is, what is our role? And so one of the videos we watch will talk about this concept of my role in restoration could fall into one of four categories, right? What is good that I can promote? What is broken that I can fix? What is evil that I can stop? Or what is missing that I can add? And part of what we try to do as we go through this class is ultimately to help people figure out, based on their experiences and their passions and their strengths, what is their role in restoring God's kingdom. And often we challenge folks to think about those four questions, your life experiences, how do they fit together? And what can you do? And maybe, again, in the big picture perspective, it's throwing a rock in the water. But if enough of us are throwing the rock in the water,
that's right,
we can make change happen.
Absolutely. So talk about the idea of starting and having spiritual discussions.
So one of the curriculum items that we have is some videos by the author of the book Tactics.
Okay.
And so he gives us a number of really good ideas on ways to start spiritual discussions. So how can you engage people in a way that helps them want to talk about those kind of issues? Most people, when they reflect on it, will realize that there's more to this world than just them.
Right.
So how do you get people walking down that path? And so the videos that we watch, he goes through that in detail and helps people really.
That sounds like it's such a great tool, because it's drilled in many people's heads that it's two things you don't discuss in public or in work settings, religion and politics. Yep. And people just totally shun those things. But to have the knowledge, the wisdom to be able to help lead those kinds of spiritual discussions could be very, very useful, especially when you think of in our workplaces. Not everyone gets to work in a Christian workplace. Right. Many people work in a melting pot where there are so many different religions. Even when you go to the shopping centers now, you see so many different religions very boldly represented. Yep. And so I can see how that would be very useful to have that knowledge.
And let me say, as a student, one of the things that's very useful in the tactics he's talking about that we go through is a lot of it's Socratic, right? Where you're asking questions. And instead of just making an argument, a propositional argument that then maybe makes someone feels defensive, you're asking them to examine their own ideas. Right? And in doing so, they start to see sort of on their own, maybe these ideas don't hold water. Maybe this doesn't, actually fit reality.
Okay.
Right? And so that's what's really powerful about it. And then, of course, you're leading them to a path of biblical truth by asking them to get there on their own, by asking questions. So really, really powerful techniques.
Well, Sean,
just to close on that, the concept we talk about is a pebble in the shoe, right? So, most people aren't going to be convinced by one discussion or one dialogue that their worldview is wrong and that your worldview is right.
Sure.
Right? Or that their worldview is incomplete and that you have the rest of the answers. But by asking these questions, as Sean talked about, you can put a pebble in their shoe, and nothing is more irritating than having a pebble in your shoe, right?
So true.
You've got to figure out a way to get that pebble out of your shoe. That sends them on a search that we know ultimately leads them to truth, because we know we have the truth.
Okay, so that's the goal. You want them to begin a search for the truth, to begin to question some things and dig deeper.
Right. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Well, Sean, let's come back to you. How did you first hear about this program?
I got interested in worldview actually some time ago, when I had kids. Okay. And we're in a society, right, where there's lots of ideas. Of course, the internet, now everyone has phones in their pockets. And as a father of children, I was God just put in my heart, there's lots of bad ideas. I need to help them decipher.
Yes.
And help them to understand what's a good idea and what's a bad idea. And a little bit too, my background, I was on the debate team in high school, so I like apologetics and arguing about things a bit. But how do you do that without being offensive in this society where an argument is actually a lot of times offensive? The truth is oftentimes offensive, right?
Right.
So how do you do that and put the pebble in their shoe and get them to think about it, like Kip was saying? So I'd listened for a long time. John Stone Street does a podcast called Breakpoint.
Okay.
And I've been listening to that forever. And they're always talking about the Colson's fellows. And actually, my kids recently all went off to college. And I was like, I think I have time. I can do this. It is an in-depth program. So I signed up to get a little more, I thought a little more, apologetics, good arguments, but I'll say it's more than that. It's a lot more than that. So if you're inclined to those type of things, that's great. You'll love it, right?
Yes.
But it's also really doing a broad breadth discussion of the topics of today.
Okay.
Right? Things that we're all running into more and more, and it's harder and harder to get away from. You can't hide from. And I would say as a Christian, you don't want to hide from. Back to the bad ideas have victims. You want to reach out. So this whole idea of creation, fall, redemption, restoration for me was really, I think it's something I'm like, I kind of know, we're here to do something. But really they drive home the point that, you're saved, you have redemption, but you're here for a reason, right? God's put you here. And though your sphere of influence you may think is small, you can do something big for the kingdom of God, right?
I love that.
What's the passion God gave you? Now that you understand how to think about the world biblically, how can you bring those truths to somebody so you can correct the bad ideas, help them, and ultimately lead them back to Christ, right? Lead them for eternal value. So to me, that was a big, solid reinforcement and takeaway is like, you can do something for the kingdom, right? And that's outward facing. Like God saved you so you could love others.
Sure.
And you could help others. And the Colson Fellow is just real good at getting you to really think about that. Like even the devotional that they have us go through a devotional the whole time, very well written devotional. But even in there, it's going through like, Nehemiah, things where these people served the kingdom of God and getting you to think about, now, how can I do that? Maybe I can do that. Right. And so anyway, so that's where it's really powerful, I think. And to Kip's point, God uses little people, right? And he does it and he uses them in big ways. And so just be open for God to use you, right? And it's really good at getting you to think about, what can I do?
Wow. Well, speaking of being used by God, God used Sean to tell me about this program. And I'm so glad to learn more about it. And Sean, one of the questions that I had when you initially mentioned you were going through it, I said, how in the world does this guy have time to do this? Because I happen to know, usually Sean's car is here when I get here and it's here when I leave. I know he has kids in college. And so how do you make the time to engage in the program?
Well, it's a heavy lift a little bit, right? You've written a lot of books, but I will say, like, I just love it, right? So and as you get into it and you're learning, like, oh wow, like, okay, this is how to biblically think about these ideas, and these are again ideas that we're all intersecting with, right? If you're in community, out in your community, talking about the issues of the day, you're going to run into these items, and that's one of the things I love about worldview is honestly, the gospel is always only 2 sentences away because God owns it all. He designed it all.
I love
So it's not like you have to force, a gospel message into anything because God's view and ideas on things is everywhere. So this, for me, is exciting to be able to read and discuss this with other believers that are also interested in doing this type of, thinking and working, right? So for me, it was fun. It was, and then the deeper I got into it, the more I just wanted to do it, right? It was like, when can I get back to finishing this, right?
Wow. So how close are you to graduating?
Couple weeks. Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Couple weeks.
So we run on the school year. So we start in July and we end in May.
Okay.
And the time question comes up probably as much as anything because it is a significant commitment of time. If you're a reader, you're reading things anyway.
Right.
The biggest part of this time component is reading. I think next year's curriculum has 13 books in it. And so that's the biggest part. The second biggest part of the curriculum is the daily devotionals. So those are laid out to help you think about this biblically, the story of creation, fall, redemption, restoration, and then to do a personal mission and vision plan using Nehemiah at the end of that.
Okay.
And we recommend that folks, if you've got something that you normally would do in the morning or whenever your quiet time is, that you substitute this in place.
Okay.
You don't try to add it on.
Sure.
You substitute it in. Ultimately, though, it comes back to being it's a prioritization decision, right? What do you want to spend your time on? What are you going to commit to?
Sure.
And the people that decide to do this program to say, hey, this is something I'm going to prioritize for the next 10 months of my life, and I'm going to commit the time and effort. If you're a reader, it's very manageable. If you're not a reader, I wasn't a reader. I had to change some other things I did in my life.
Sure.
I had to watch less football. I recorded the games and I watched them in an hour instead of 3. That was my reprioritization choice. You do have to do this. We don't want to make it seem like it's not an intensive program. It's it's probably 5 hours a week minimum that you're going to put in.
Okay.
And one hack is with Audible. You can listen to a lot of these books. I was going to
ask about that, about Audible, because I love to be able to listen to audiobooks.
And a lot of the students listen to the books.
Okay.
Again, that's the biggest chunk of time is reading the books.
Okay. So kind of paint a picture for me of what the classroom looks like. Are people physically meeting at one location? Is it virtual? Is it hybrid? Kind of what does that look like?
During the month, all your work is done virtual.
Okay.
Right. So there's an online learning platform that we have that a number of colleges use, and that helps you figure out what you're going to do each week. So each week there's a daily devotional. You listen to the break points. There's maybe some video content that you watch. Twice a month, there's a webinar with Christian thought leaders that you can either participate in live and ask questions, or if that doesn't work with your schedule, you can watch the recording later.
That's good.
There's books that you read, and so there's a book or two assigned each month that you're going to read. And then once a month on a Saturday, usually the first Saturday or a Saturday early in the month, we get together in Katy and we meet face to face and we process the content that we worked through and we read and watched the month previous. So that's really one of the most important components of the program, is you're not just reading, doing this stuff on your own.
Right.
At the end of each month, you get together with like-minded Christians and you talk through in small groups what you learned about, what you read about the previous month. And so iron sharpens iron concept as a way to really get the material ingrained into yourself.
Excellent.
I was going to say each month has a topic that we go through. So we start the year with the big picture, and then we do worldview and Christian history in September. In October, we do apologetics. In November, we look at new worldviews like expressive individualism and like progressive Christianity. We talk about Islam in December, and we also do some discussion of public theology. That's sort of all the worldview understanding. So that's the first semester. Second semester, we talk about culture and how culture is formed and abortion. We talk about critical race theory and social justice and how we get racial unity the right way, not the wrong way. March, we typically talk about sexuality, and there's just all kinds of sexual issues right now running around out there.
Right.
And how, as a Christian, do we respond to those? In April, we do spiritual disciplines. So we read J.I. Packer's classic book, Knowing God, all throughout the year. And then in April, we want to come back around to this, your relationship with God at the end, because we spend a lot of time talking about a lot of other things, but at the end of the day,
it boils down
your
to
relationship with God is number one, foundational, right? And then in May, the meeting we're just getting ready to have here in a couple of weeks, we talk about how do we take action. So there's a great book we read called Restoring All Things that asks those 4 questions we talked about earlier, and then we challenge. So this is not just about learning.
Right.
It's about doing at the end. And so at the end, the students are going to get commissioned because Chuck Colson was a Marine.
Oh, wow.
Not graduate, they're going to be commissioned because we're not done. We're just getting started. And so in May, we talk about what am I going to do now with all this training as part of how we wrap up the whole process. And then in June, we actually have a commissioning service, and we celebrate the hard work that everyone's put in to complete the program.
Excellent. If you're just tuning in, we are speaking with some representatives about Colson Fellows. And I want you to just recap, as you did at the beginning, just give us that little summary statement, Kip, about what Colson Fellows is all about.
So Colson Fellows is an intensive year-long training where you learn how to use biblical wisdom to navigate the craziness of our current time, and you find your place in restoring God's world.
I'll just say one highlight of the curriculum, actually, because, it's a lot of reading, it's a lot of great discussion, is they actually have these Zoom calls where you could talk to the author.
Whoa,
usually. It's like Alyssa Childers,
awesome.
Oz Guinness, Christopher Yon, a lot of these authors that are famous, I guess, in the circuit, but they make themselves available, and then you can submit questions, and it's a live Zoom call. So that's pretty neat.
Yes.
And just to hear their heart too,
absolutely,
where they're coming from. So that's just a great. It's more than just reading, right? You're getting to chat with these guys. So
that is a huge benefit.
Yeah,
a huge benefit. I think you mentioned, Kip, that people can actually get some credit, some seminary credit for some of this.
Yeah. So we've set up. This is the first year that we provided that. We set up with the Bible Seminary, which is an accredited seminary. They can get 6 credits for the program. And we believe that those credits are going to transfer to most seminaries. So if they don't actually want to go to seminary at the Bible Seminary, that's fine. They can, if they're already in a program or they're continuing a program, or if they picked out a different seminary, there's a very high likelihood that they can work with that seminary and transfer those credits as part of their program.
Excellent.
Slightly different process to sign up for the program if you are looking for seminary credit, but that's exciting.
Absolutely.
That's an exciting thing that we've done in the last 6 months in order to make it available to those folks that are sort of having this debate. Do I do Colson Fellows? Do I do seminary? Now you can do both.
Oh, that's excellent. So who are the ideal candidates for a program like this?
So the ideal candidate is someone who realizes that there's craziness going on in the world.
Oh, that sounds like everybody.
Right. And they want to do something about it, right? So that not only do they want to understand it better so they can explain it to their kids and their grandkids, but ultimately they realize, hey, God's got a role for me in this. Maybe I don't know for right now what that role is, but God's got a role for me in this. Another group of ideal candidates are pastors, discipleship pastors, speaking pastors, youth pastors, folks that have to train up others in how to deal with this. And so one of the things that the Colson Fellows has started in the last 3 years, which has really taken off, is this idea of church affiliates.
Okay.
So right now we have 60 regional cohorts. So there's 60 cities around the world where you can participate in this training. But what we realize is a lot of churches need an effective advanced discipleship class. And it's a lot of work to put that together, a lot of work. And so now they can become church affiliates. They can send 3 to 5 of their members through the program.
Okay.
And then the next year, those members can go back and start doing the training within the church.
Okay.
So they get a big discount. The people that go through the program through the church get a big discount and participate in that. And so that has taken off. It took us like 8 years to get from 0 to 60 regional cohorts. It took us 2 years to get from 0 to 60 church affiliates.
Wow. So that raises another question. Can the person participate as an individual, or do they need to come through a church?
No, they need to come through either the regional cohort.
Okay.
Or for those folks that don't live close enough to a regional cohort, there's online. In each time zone, there's an online option that exists.
Excellent.
Once 3 to 5 people in your church go through the program and get trained up as Colson Fellows, then they can go and start a church affiliate with obviously the support of the church leadership.
Okay.
And so that's an advantage, a way that your church can take advantage of this discipleship program and get the word out much more effectively in your church and make your church stronger.
Sure. Well, Kip, I'd love for you to reiterate those 4 questions when you think about our role in restoring God's world.
Yep.
What are those 4 questions? I thought they were so impactful.
What is good that you can promote? What is evil that you can stop? What is missing that you can add? And what is broken that you can fix?
Wow. Those are powerful questions that we can all ponder because we all can have a response to those questions.
Yeah, whether you go through the Colson Fellows program or not.
Yes.
God's got a role for you.
That's right.
Be a restorative agent in the world that you live in.
Sean, what can you say has been, and you talked some about some of your takeaways, but what are some just final words you could say to encourage people who may be listening and kind of on the fence, kind of thinking about it?
Yeah, one of the things just in my Christian life I've run into, and even myself at times, you feel like, oh, I'm not going to speak to that because I don't know the exact right words to say, or I'm going to mess it up, or I'm going to be ridiculed, right, in public for being this Christian guy. I would say this class is, and I think apologetics in general, but this program in particular helps give you the confidence that, one, you don't have to know everything, but it will get you in a position where you do know how to answer a lot of things.
Okay.
It also gets you in a position where you know the right questions to ask. So I think it helps you feel like you're prepared. None of us are 100% prepared, right? None of us are Jesus Christ, right? So it gives you that footing so that you feel like you can go out and really make a big impact. And so that's, for me, it gives Christians a little more confidence, or a lot more confidence, so they can go out and really be an impact in the world, right? Because I do think there's a little bit of a fear of the culture right now in the church sometimes, right?
Sure.
To speak
absolutely.
up.
Right. I think that's excellent. Wow. Kip, what has been rewarding for you as an instructor?
Well, the thing that's rewarding for me is just to see people find their place, right? So as we go through the curriculum over the year, and you can see the eyes opening and the people saying, I get it. I'm starting to understand this. I'm starting to understand why the Bible leads to flourishing and why the Bible helps people understand these things. And then as they walk through that, then they get to the point where, all right, now I can figure out where I need to be. I figured out what I need to do. And whether it's teaching worldview at their church or to their families, or starting a ministry or participating in a ministry, people have gone in all kinds of different directions coming out of this, but having people find the place that they fit in God's restorative plan is just neat to see.
Excellent. So there's time, right, for people to register for tell us about your next upcoming class and those registration deadlines.
Sure. So we run on the school year. So we start on July 1st, which means the registration deadline is June 15th.
Okay.
There's a short application that you need to fill out. Almost everyone everyone that's applied so far has been accepted. If you're committed enough to apply, you're committed enough to be part of the program. And so there's lots of places to get more information as well. So you can go to colsonfellowshouston.org. You can go to colsonfellows.org. There's information there. There's recordings of webinars there that describe the program in even more detail. There's all kinds of questions being answered. Or you can inquire there, and we'll get back to you and help you figure out if this is the right fit for you or not. So it's been a great program. We're going to do our 7th year this year in Houston, and we'd love to have you join us.
Excellent. Wow. Well, this has been wonderful. Very informative. We hope your interest has been piqued to learn more about Colson Fellows. And as Kip has said, you can go to colsonfellowshouston.org or colsonfellows.org. Again, I just want to say thanks to you, Kip, for all that you're doing and for the team there at Colson Fellows. And also thank you, Sean Hill, for joining us and letting us know all about this.
You're welcome.
All right. And as always, thank you to our wonderful audience for joining us. And we hope you'll join us again next week on another edition of Community Beat. I'm Kim Kasi McKee on 89.3 KSBJ.
Thanks for joining us for Community Beat with Kim Kasi McKee. Join us every Saturday morning at 5:30 on 89.3 KSBJ.